interstate recruits burst onto the VFL scene at the start of 1975. And colour, the missing dimension, came into our homes for the first time. There was Philip Carman at Collingwood, whose hero status was to turn sour later in the 70s. Carlton paid dearly for Rhodes scholar Mike Fitzpatrick from Western Australia, but due to studies at Oxford, they saw him rarely in those days. And Footscray paid $50,000 for South Australian Neil Saxey. In this incident, Saxey broke his spine and became a quadriplegic. It was the tragedy of the decade. When Essendon met Carlton at VFL Park on Anzac Day, a crowd of 77,770 turned up to see the undefeated teams tangle. It was the biggest crowd ever to see a match at the park, and they weren't disappointed. With Des Tubman leading the charge and young Simon Madden, a 17-year-old schoolboy, kicking 6 goals, Essendon won by 17 points in a match remembered for its ferocity.
With a tap back towards Noonan. Noonan breaks clear, steadies, he kicks. He put it through.
When Essendon and Carlton met the second time round, there were some old scores to settle. Field umpire Ian Robertson had his hands full as he sorted this tangle out. In a marathon sitting of the league tribunal, 8 players faced 11 charges. Carlton's Rod Ashman and Rod Austin got 4 weeks, Philip Pennell 2 weeks, and David Mackay a reprimand. Of the Essendon players, Robin Close and Laurie Maloney got 2 weeks, with Ron Andrews and Neville Fields cleared. In the second encounter for the year, Carlton won the fight and the match by 80 points. The Blues kicked a record 14-1 in the second quarter and still had time to brawl. Meanwhile at Moorabbin, Phil Carman had undergone a major change. He clipped on a pair of gleaming white boots and kicked 11 goals in an awesome display of sheer ability. From that day on, he was tagged Fabulous Phil.
Up they go, Carman's got it again. He fires. Another goal.
With Carman in magnificent touch all season, it was difficult to believe that the Magpies had to battle to get into the finals. They beat Melbourne by 1 point in the last game to secure 5th place, but were bundled up by Richmond the very next week in the elimination final. Earlier in the season, Peter McKenna had retired after having part of his kidney removed. He'd played 182 games and kicked 837 goals. He'd topped the ton 3 times. It was a season of change. The VFL launched its properties division. After a protracted battle, John Patura was cleared to Richmond. In exchange, South Melbourne received the clearances of Brian Roberts, Graham Teasdale and Francis Jackson.
It's on its way, it's swinging around. It's swinging around. It's a goal.
Gary Dempsey was only 20 in 1968 when bushfires swept across his parents' property at Truganini. Trapped by the flames, he received first-degree burns to the arms, back and legs as he ran for cover. There were fears that his career in league football was over. That same lad came back to be the most outstanding ruckman of the 70s. And in 1975, he proved just that by winning the Brownlow Medal by 1 vote from Stan Alves and 2 votes from Graham Moss. As his name was announced, the big fellow shed a tear, and nobody in the room or watching it at home cared one little bit.
1975 Brownlow Medal to Gary Dempsey.
It was a magnificent year for the High Flyers, and these were the marks of 1975. For the second year in a row, North Melbourne under Barassi was in the grand final, but this time their opponents would be Hawthorn. Since their admission to the VFL together in 1925, the 2 former association teams had never fought out a league grand final. Hawthorn had won 2 premierships, but North had always retained that Cinderella image. On September 27th, at the Melbourne Cricket Ground, before 110,551 avid fans, North Melbourne changed all that. In a one-sided match, North steamrolled the Hawks by 55 points to bring glory to Arden Street at last. Their win capped a year that saw tragedy and controversy. Neil Saxey was in the Austin Hospital. Hawthorn's little rover Peter Crimmins was operated on to remove a cancerous growth and resumed training as soon as his health improved. Bob Rose retired as coach of Footscray, and Tuddy and Essendon parted company after some torrid public exchanges. On grand final day, however, the only thought was of North Melbourne and its first premiership. For Barry Davis, the man who accepted the Premiership Cup and held it aloft, it was to be his last game. And Doug Wade bowed out after kicking 1,065 goals in 267 games.
There'll be a ball up here, I reckon now it's called play on. And Knights, well played, Peter Knights, comes out with the ball, gets it to the half-forward flank on the member stand side, and a mark is being taken to the goal square. At the back as Wade as a goal. He's got it again. A goal away. Flank taken by Martello. He gets it over to Leon Rice. Rice into the goal square once again. Moncrief went up high, but look at that. Gumbleton will be awarded the mark. He's got him. He's grabbed him. Umpire says player has grabbed this down. And they're not begging any pardons at the moment as the ball goes back and a mark to Blight. Malcolm Blight is now on the back line. Oh, too high, I'd say. Staying at the back was Count. He can't get clear. Greig's there backing up well. Look at this fella go now. Greig's ready to send him to attack. He's going to boot the ball long up towards Wade. What's going to happen now? The ball's pushed to the ground. Kikovich trying to get clear. Gets a hand pass. Brenda's missed it. There's Wade going for a goal. Oh! He's kicked the point. Carlton gets it across here to Malcolm Blight. Malcolm Blight gets it down into the forward zone once again. No mark. Chance here for Burns. He's going to be tackled by Welsh. A long hand pass to Arnold Brytis. Brytis steadies. He shoots at the big ones. And there's another one. Here. This is a pretty long quarter. In they come. It's North Melbourne through Chisnell getting that ball to the half-forward flank on the northern side of the ground. Trotters after. There's the siren. Siren's gone.
The man who took the kudos was once again Ron Barassi. He was a proud man as he ran onto the MCG to share his players' joy.
At the MCG in the 1975 grand final, the final scoreboard reads North Melbourne 19-8, 122, Hawthorn 9-13, 67.
It was magic, it really was.
Has it changed?
Oh, well, the first is something special. Not many people in the modern era can claim that joy.
First.
Hawthorn 61, Footscray 54 and St Kilda 66 and North Melbourne 75. All the other famous clubs had their go a long while ago at the first. But I can remember going back to the social club afterwards, and I'd been pleasured in grand finals myself before, and I'd been spoiled in that regard. So my greatest pleasure that night was watching the old supporters, 50, 60 and 70-year-olds, just
Doug Dale
the pleasure. Oh, those people too, but they were just beside themselves, and they were saying, if I die now, it doesn't matter, sort of thing. It was absolutely magnificent.
The way they played and the way they finished, and they had a smell of the first premiership, and I don't think any side would have stopped them when they saw victory in their grasp, and that was their first premiership. And when you get 18 fellows after the one thing with such an intense desire and coached by Barassi, it's pretty hard to do much about it. And we were whipped, and we had to suffer the disgrace of having people around the club say, I don't think Hawthorn tried. But it certainly enabled us to sow a few seeds for the next year.